Welcome to the Future of Us Bookcast, your gateway to insights shaping our future. Today we're looking at a really foundational text, I think, for anyone trying to understand the next phase of the internet and, well, economic coordination. It's Token Economy, How the Web3 Reinvents the Internet by Shermin Voshmgir. She's an Austrian writer with Iranian roots, and she's done, I think, an amazing job just synthesizing this huge, often kind of scattered knowledge base around blockchain distributed ledgers, DLTs.
Yeah, and the book is so necessary right now. The aim, really, is to cut through the hype, and actually contextualize the deep socioeconomic shifts, the tech implications of Web3.
Right, yeah.
So that means getting into the actual details, the brass tacks of smart contracts, DeFi, that's decentralized finance, governance models, and crucially, how they actually work, making it accessible even if you're not, say, a computer science PhD.
Definitely. And she starts with this great analogy that kind of anchors the whole thing. The book basically argues that these cryptographic tokens, they are to Web3 what websites were to Web1 way back early 90s.
Exactly. Back then, HTML was clearly this new tool for publishing info, but the full potential. E-commerce, social media, global marketplaces, totally unclear, just vague.
We're kind of in that same foggy place now with tokens, aren't we?
We absolutely are. It's become incredibly easy, almost trivial, to just spin up a new token standard with a few lines of code. That's the simple bit. The hard part, and this is what the book really hammers home, is designing the economics, the incentives, the legal side, making sure it all hangs together properly so the tokenized system actually works, it's resilient, it does what it's meant to do.
Right.
And Voshmgir suggests pretty strongly that out of the thousands, literally thousands of tokens listed today, many are probably doomed, precisely because they're missing that rigorous design layer.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The first section is tokenized networks, Web3, the stateful web. Looking back, Web1, that was about information access, right? Revolutionizing that. Then Web2 revolutionized interaction, social media, e-commerce platforms.
Yeah, Facebook, Amazon, all that.
But the book argues Web3 is this huge leap forward. It says, and this is a key quote, the Web3 has the potential to revolutionize agreements and value exchange. That's a big claim.
It's massive, and it's the core paradigm shift you really have to get your head around. See, the problem with Web 2, as the book lays out, is that it was just a front-end revolution.
Okay.
They got these slick, easy-to-use apps, sure, but they were all built on centralized platforms. Google, Facebook, you name it. These trusted intermediaries, they control all our data. They set the rules. They capture basically all the value we, the users, generate.
So Web3 turns that inside out. It's not about the shiny interface.
Exactly. It's a back-end revolution. It introduces this concept of a universal state layer built on distributed ledgers. So instead of one company's central database holding all the cards, the information, the rules, they're managed collaboratively by a whole network of peers, peer-to-peer or P2P.
And this idea of state is key here, isn't it? What does that actually mean in this context?
Right. So state refers to the fundamental truths of the system, like who is who owns what asset, and who has the right to do what action. The current internet, Web 2, is essentially stateless when it comes to value.
Yiming.
Meaning I can easily send you a copy of a file, like an email attachment that's information transfer, but I can't efficiently send you the actual ownership of a unique digital thing or real digital money without going through a bank or PayPal or Visa, a central clearer.
Okay.
Web3 aims to build that native value transfer mechanism right into the internet's base layer, trustless value transfer at the protocol level.
Okay, I think that first quote really nails the scale of this change. Let me read it again. While the Web 2 was a front-end revolution, the Web 3 is a back-end revolution, introducing a universal state layer. The significance feels profound. We're shifting the internet from just sharing info to being this kind of trust engine.
A trust engine, yeah.
Capable of handling global economic agreements without needing the old gatekeepers, the traditional legal or financial institutions.
And the resilience of that state layer is crucial. The security model is totally different from Web 2. Think about it. To mess with data on a company's server, you need to breach their hopefully strong central firewall, one point of attack.
Right.
But Web3 security, with DLTs, is designed so that to corrupt the record, you'd effectively need to, as the book puts it, break into multiple houses around the globe simultaneously.
Wow.
The distributed nature means the sheer cost, the computational power, the economic effort needed to cheat the system is way out of proportion to any potential gain. That's the foundation of this trust by math.
Okay, trust by math. That leads us nicely into the next bit. Keeping track of the tokens, This is where we get into crypto economics, right? And Bitcoin is the poster child.
Absolutely. Bitcoin was the first practical working example of crypto economics. You
Right.
have this distributed global tribe, if you will, where the native token Bitcoin itself is the glue. It's the incentive that makes the whole thing work.
And it solved this notoriously difficult problem from computer science.
Yeah.
The Byzantine generals problem.
Yeah, that old chestnut, it's basically asking, how do you get a bunch of disconnected actors who don't necessarily trust the generals to agree on a single plan, especially when some might be traitors sending bad info?
Okay.
For ages, getting that kind of reliable agreement, fault-tolerant consensus in a totally open P2P network, people thought it was computationally impossible.
Until proof of work or POW.
Exactly. POW doesn't rely on trusting people or authorities. It uses, as the book says, reverse game theory. It flips the incentives.
How so?
The system rewards honest participants, the miners, with new Bitcoin for spending real-world resources like electricity and computing power to validate transactions and secure the network.
Okay, so it pays to be good.
Right. And conversely, it makes cheating incredibly expensive. So expensive, it's economically irrational. An attacker trying to rewrite the ledger would need to burn a frankly ridiculous amount of energy and specialized hardware. Way more cost than any possible benefit from cheating.
That really highlights the power of this second quote. For the first time in the history of distributed computing, the Bitcoin protocol introduced a mathematical solution to this problem with the introduction of proof of work, which made the economic cost of attacking the system disproportionate to the benefit of doing so. So it's not legal contracts ensuring trust anymore. It's baked into the math and the economics.
Precisely. Trust by math, not trust by legal contract. And the book goes into what this protects against. Even if someone could pull off a theoretical 51% attack, controlling most of the network's computing power.
Which is already insanely difficult and expensive for something like Bitcoin.
Right. Even then, they still can't just invent transactions out of thin air or change old confirmed transactions from weeks ago. Why? Because every single transaction needs the owner's unique secret private key to sign it. The attacker doesn't have those keys.
Ah, okay. So what could they do?
They could potentially try to block new transactions from getting confirmed, or maybe try to double spend their own coins if they timed it perfectly, but they can't steal funds signed by other people's keys.
Got it. Now, it's worth pointing out, not all DLTs work exactly like Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
The book talks about permission structures.
Yeah, that's a key distinction. You have permissionless ledgers, like Bitcoin or Ethereum. They're public, open to anyone, totally trustless. That's why they need those token incentives, because you don't know who else is participating.
Okay.
Then you have permissioned ledgers. These are usually private, run by, say, a group of companies, an industry consortium. The participants are known, they're trusted based on existing contracts or agreements.
So they don't need the expensive proof of work.
Often not. Since trust is based on authority and legal frameworks, they don't typically need a native token for incentives. This means they can often be much faster, process more transactions. But they trade that decentralized resilience for speed and control. They're more like high-tech private clubs.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So let's pivot slightly to the tools that actually secure the tokens themselves in this P2P world. The section on token security. This brings us to cryptography.
Foundational stuff. Asymmetric cryptography, or public key cryptography. It's all about the separation of two keys. You have a private key secret, yours alone, used for signing, and a public key shared openly, used for verifying signatures or encrypting messages to you.
The book uses the padlock and key analogy, which I think is pretty helpful.
It works well. Imagine Alice wants Bob to send her a secure message. Alice gives everyone her public key. Think of it as an open padlock. Bob takes his message, puts it in a box, and snaps Alice's public padlock shut. Easy.
Okay.
Now that box is locked. The only thing that can open it is Alice's unique private key, her physical key that matches the padlock. Nobody else's key works. It allows for secure communication and verifiable digital signatures across this open, untrusted network.
Okay. That secures the message or the transaction signing. What about making sure the data itself hasn't been tampered with? That's hashing, right?
Exactly. Hashing is a mathematical trick. It's a one-way function. You feed any data into, it could be a single comma, a whole novel, a huge video file, and it spits out a fixed-size digital fingerprint, a hash.
And the key is that it's super sensitive to change.
That's the magic, the avalanche effect.
Yeah.
Change just one tiny thing in the input data, add a space, change a comma and the output hash changes completely. It looks totally different, random.
Yep.
So this gives you instant proof of data integrity. You don't need to reread the whole document to see if it's changed. Just compare the hash value. If it matches the original hash, the data is identical. If it doesn't match, something's been altered.
Okay, very cool. Now, before we move off security fundamentals, we need to talk about wallets.
Yeah.
Because there's a common misconception here the book tackles head on.
Yes. People often think of a crypto wallet like a physical wallet holding cash, but that's not quite right.
So what is it?
The book clarifies it's more like a keychain. It stores your key specifically, your public-private key pair. The tokens themselves, your Bitcoin or Ether, they never actually leave the public ledger. They're just entries on that distributed database associated with your public address.
So losing your wallet means losing your keys.
Exactly. Losing your private key is like losing the only key to a transparent safe deposit box. You can see your funds on the public ledger, but you can't access them, can't move them, can't prove they're yours anymore. Gone forever.
Ouch. That really highlights the usability challenge, doesn't it? If managing keys is too hard.
People will just hand them over to centralized exchanges for convenience, which ironically kind of defeats the whole purpose of user control and sovereignty that Web3 is aiming for.
And that idea of sovereignty takes us right into the next major theme. Who controls the tokens? User-centric identity systems. The book makes a really strong case against the way Web 2 handles identity, what it calls server-centric identities.
Yeah, the critique here is pretty sharp. Think about the current setup. We have these massive centralized data silos. Google, Facebook, Amazon, you name it.
Right, creates password chaos for us users.
Totally. And huge fraud protection costs for businesses trying to verify who people are, but fundamentally the issue is control. We, the users, have basically zero sovereignty over our own data.
And these platforms use that data, leveraging network effects to lock us in, right? Building empires on targeted ads and tracking our behavior. The book calls it a form of surveillance capitalism.
Pretty much. So the Web3 alternative tries to flip that power dynamic completely using user-centric identities, sometimes called self-sovereign identity or SSI. The goal is to shift the control away from the platform and put it back in the hands of the individual user.
How does that work in practice? I know it involves something called decentralized identifiers or DIDs.
Exactly. So when you set up a Web3 wallet, you generate your key pair. That process also creates and registers a unique DID for you, essentially. Your public address can act as your identifier. Now, this DD can be linked to what are called verifiable credentials. Think of these as tamper-proof digital versions of real-world documents, your degree certificate, your driver's license, maybe an insurance card.
Who issues those?
The original authority, the university, the DMV, the insurance company, they cryptographically sign the credential, proving its authenticity, and then you store it securely in your own digital wallet.
Ah, so I hold the credential, not the government or the university server.
Precisely.
Huh.
So now let's say a website needs to verify you're over 18. Instead of logging in via Google and giving them access to your whole profile, you present just the relevant part of your verifiable driver's license credential from your wallet.
And they can check the signature.
They cryptographically verify the signature from the issuing authority. The DMV is valid, confirming the credential is real and the age claim is true, without needing to see your address or license number or anything else. You only reveal the minimum necessary data.
That feels like a huge shift. This brings us to the third quote, which really captures the impact. The separation of the identifier, authentication, and data is crucial to a user-centric setup. It can be seen as a system of checks and balances in a data-driven economy that guarantees the level of autonomy and privacy over one's digital footprint.
Yeah, the significance is massive. It offers a genuine structural alternative to the surveillance economy. By giving you, the user, fine-grained control over what data you share when and with whom, it enables real privacy by design.
Okay, so we've got decentralized identity, we've got security through crypto. Now let's look at the engine that makes agreements happen in Web3. Smart contracts. These are positioned as a solution to the high costs and friction of traditional agreements, right? The need for lawyers, banks, platforms like Uber or Airbnb acting as intermediaries.
Exactly. A smart contract, fundamentally, is just software, self-enforcing software that runs on a DLT. Because the code is the contract and it executes automatically on the blockchain, it drastically cuts down the cost and time needed to, well, reach an agreement, formalize it, and make sure it's enforced. No need for manual checks or human intervention once it's deployed.
The book uses this great thought experiment to show the friction smart contracts tackle. I think this fourth quote captures it well. Would you enter into a contract with someone whom you've never met and therefore don't know and don't trust? Would you agree to lend money to a stranger?
And the instinctive answer for most people is no way.
Right.
Because the traditional costs are just too high. Legal fees, background checks, setting up collateral, enforcing the deal across borders. It makes P2P transactions between strangers almost impossible on a global scale.
But smart contracts automate that trust layer.
They aim to. They formalize these complex relationships entirely peer-to-peer, potentially across the globe, by making the execution automatic and predictable based on code.
Okay, but the code needs to know what's happening in the real world to react, right? How does a smart contract know if, say, a flight was actually delayed for an insurance payout?
Good question. That's where oracles come in. Oracles are like trusted messengers. Their external data feeds could be software checking a flight status API, or even hardware like an IoT sensor reading a temperature that securely bring verified, real-world information onto the blockchain for the smart contract to use.
So the Oracle says flight XYZ delayed by 3 hours, and the smart contract automatically triggers the insurance payout defined in its code.
Exactly. The oracle is the bridge between the off-chain world and the on-chain contract logic.
The book gives a really concrete example, buying a secondhand car using a smart contract. This really illustrates a key concept called atomicity.
Yes, atomicity is crucial. It means a whole sequence of actions within the smart contract must either all succeed together as one single indivisible unit, or if any part fails, the entire transaction is instantly rolled back, reverted as if nothing ever happened. All or nothing.
Okay, so walk us through the car example. Traditionally, it's a mess of paperwork, waiting for the DMV, the bank, the notary.
Right. Slow, expensive, lots of intermediaries. With a smart contract, Alice wants to buy Bob's car. The contract first checks, does Alice have the funds in her connected wallet? Is Bob verifiably the registered owner according to the DLT record?
Checks pass. Then what?
Then the blockchain network executes a series of actions atomically, all at once. 1, it updates the ledger to register Alice as the new owner. 2, it transfers the agreed funds from Alice's wallet to Bob's. 3, it might grant Alice the digital keys or access codes to the car's smart lock. 4, it could even automatically trigger an update to Alice's insurance policy via another integrated smart contract.
Wow. And if any of those steps fail, like if the connection to the insurance system hiccup,
The whole thing reverts. Alice keeps her money, Bob keeps his car, ownership doesn't change on the ledger, no partial execution. That atomicity removes huge amounts of risk and the need for escrow or manual coordination.
it's fascinating. And worth noting, the idea itself isn't brand new. Nick Szabo was writing about smart contracts way back in 1996.
Yeah, long before blockchains made them truly practical, he saw the potential for cryptography to formalize agreements. The DLT was the missing piece to make them self-executing and widely usable.
Okay, so from automated contracts, the next logical step is automated organizations, which brings us to institutional economics and governance of DAOs. DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. These are protocols aiming to manage assets and relationships collectively, right? A direct challenge to traditional corporate structures.
That's the ambition. At their heart, DAOs try to solve the classic principal-agent dilemma. You know, the problem where the agents could be company managers, politicians, anyone acting on behalf of others might act in their own self-interest instead of the interest of the principals, shareholders, citizens, who they're supposed to represent.
Because the principals don't have perfect information or control.
Exactly. DAOs, with their transparency and code-based rules, aim to align everyone's incentives automatically towards the collective goal.
But the early days were rough. The book highlights the story of the DAO from 2016 as a major cautionary tale.
Oh yeah, the DAO. Huge cautionary tale. It was meant to be this massive, decentralized venture capital fund. Raised something like $150 million worth of ether at the time. Unprecedented.
And then
Disaster. A subtle bug, a programming error in its very complex smart contract code was exploited. A hacker managed to start draining funds about a third of the total pool.
yikes.
The fallout was intense. It forced a controversial hard fork of the Ethereum blockchain to recover the funds, but more importantly, it exposed a massive blind spot in early DAO thinking. The almost complete lack of mechanisms to handle unexpected problems, unforeseen events the developers call edge cases. There was no governance plan for when things went wrong.
So the initial designs were flawed. Too simplistic.
The book argues, yes, they were often based on these idealized assumptions of perfect economic rationality from classical economics. They just didn't account for real human behavior.
Like what?
It's like the free rider problem. Small token holders rationally thinking, why should I spend my time and effort voting or analyzing proposals when my vote is tiny? I'll just let the big guys handle it. Combine that with bounded rationality, the fact that most people just don't have the time, expertise, or frankly, the inclination to deeply understand complex proposals, and you got terrible voter turnout. Decision-making power ended up concentrated anyway, just maybe with different people.
So DAOs aren't just pure code then. The book calls them technology-enabled social organisms.
Exactly. Governance isn't just the code, it's twofold. There's social governance, that's the human layer, the debates, the arguments, the community consensus building, like the messy decision to fork Ethereum after the DAO. And then there's the algorithmic administration of governance. That's the part the code enforces.
Which leads to what the book calls the myth of decentralization.
Right. The code might set a decentralized default state, but code is written by humans, it can have bugs, it reflects biases. When things go wrong, as they inevitably do, you need human intervention, human judgment, which kind of contradicts the whole code is law, absolutism some people pushed early on.
So DAOs don't eliminate power structures, they just change them.
Pretty much. While they might reduce reliance on traditional hierarchies, they often end up concentrating influence around a new elite. The technical experts, the protocol politicians, the large token holders who do have the resources and knowledge to navigate the complex techno-legal system. They become the new, perhaps more distributed, but still powerful, gatekeepers.
Okay, fascinating complexities there. Let's zoom back in on the core unit. Tokens. The book is clear. Tokens aren't files, they're entries on a ledger, representing conditional rights. And because they're cheap to create and transfer, they enable collaboration across borders at incredibly low cost.
Right. And cryptographic tokens are just a special kind of smart contract, a token contract. The key distinction we often talk about is fungibility.
Fungible versus non-fungible.
Yeah. Fungible tokens, like your standard currencies or utility tokens, often following the ERC-20 standard on Ethereum, are interchangeable. My dollar is the same as your dollar.
Okay.
Non-fungible tokens, NFTs, like the ERC 721 standard, are unique. Each one has distinct properties. Think digital art, a concert ticket for a specific seat, a property deed, or even that self-sovereign identity credential we talked about.
And the big impact of being able to create these easily, especially NFTs, is fractional ownership.
Huge. Suddenly, assets that were previously totally illiquid and incredibly expensive, think a skyscraper, a rare painting, a stake in a private company, can be tokenized, divided into potentially millions of tiny, tradable digital pieces.
Which boosts liquidity.
Massively. It opens up investment in these asset classes to a much wider audience and makes price discovery potentially more efficient.
Okay, and this ability to tokenize almost anything leads us straight into decentralized finance, or DeFi.
The implications here are enormous. Because you can create tokens representing almost any kind of value, asset, or right, and settle transactions near instantly on a DLT. The book suggests we could see this grand convergence.
The convergence of what?
Of the traditional money system, the financial system, stocks, bonds, derivatives, and the real economy, physical asset services. If almost any asset can be tokenized and traded frictionlessly on these open protocols, they essentially become bankable funds, accessible globally 24/7 via permissionless code.
Wow, that's a radical vision. But for any of that to work reliably day to day, you need price stability, don't you? Protocol tokens like Bitcoin or Ether are famously volatile.
Absolutely. Their volatility, often driven by fixed supply schedules and market speculation, makes them terrible for everyday commerce, like pricing coffee or paying salaries. This obvious need led to the development of stable tokens, or stable coins.
And the book outlines two main approaches to achieving that stability.
Broadly, yes. The first type is asset collateralized stable tokens. Think Tether, USDT, or USD Coin, USDC. These are essentially centralized IOUs.
How so?
They claim to be backed 1.1 by real-world stable assets held off-chain, usually US dollars, sometimes gold or other assets sitting in a bank account managed by a central custodian company. Simple concept, easy to understand.
But the risk is?
Counterparty risk. You have to trust that the centralized company actually holds the reserves they claim to hold. Are they fully backed? Are their audits reliable? That trust is the weak link.
The book mentions Digix Gold as a slightly different take. tokenizing physical gold.
Yeah, they try to increase transparency, they tokenize gold stored in vaults, but they use things like IPFS, a distributed file system, and blockchain hashing to create a more public, auditable trail of their gold reserves and audits, trying to mitigate that counterparty risk through better verification.
Okay, so that's centralized asset-backed. What's the alternative?
The second major type is crypto-collateralized stable tokens. The prime example here is DAI from the MakerDAO system. These aim for decentralization.
How do they stay stable if they're backed by volatile crypto like Ether?
Through over-collateralization and smart contracts. To create DAI, a user has to lock up a larger value of volatile crypto, like ETH, into a smart contract called a collateralized debt position, or CDP.
Larger value.
Yes, significantly larger. The collateralization ratio might be, say, 150% or even higher. So you might lock $150 worth of ETH to mint $100 worth of DAI.
Why so high?
It's a buffer, because the collateral ETH price can drop. If the value of your locked ETH falls below a certain predetermined threshold, the liquidation ratio, the smart contract automatically sells off your ETH on the open market.
To protect the DAI holders.
Exactly, to ensure that every DAI in circulation remains credibly backed by sufficient value, even if the underlying collateral is volatile. The stability comes from the automated economic mechanism in the code, not trust in a central company.
Very clever. Now, another major tension the book explores is privacy. Public ledgers are transparent, which has benefits, but also downsides, right? We need privacy tokens.
It's a huge tension. On one hand, transparency is great for auditing and accountability. On the other hand, if every transaction is public forever, it's terrible for individual and commercial privacy.
How so?
Well, first, it can compromise fungibility. If a specific coin was known to be involved in illicit activity way back in its history, future exchanges or merchants might refuse to accept it, making it tainted and worth less than other identical coins. Okay. And second, even if addresses are pseudonymous, sophisticated data analysis can often link transactions together, connect them to off-chain identities or metadata, and eventually de-anonymize users. Not very private at all.
So privacy tech aims to hide the details while still proving validity. What are the main approaches the book mentions?
Probably the most powerful is zero-knowledge proofs, specifically ZK snarks, famously used by Zcash. It's almost like magic.
How does it work, roughly?
It allows someone, a prover, to mathematically convince someone else, a verifier, that they know a secret, or that a statement is true, like, I have enough funds for this transaction, without revealing the secret itself. You prove the validity without showing the underlying data.
Mind-bending. What else?
There are other techniques too. Ring signatures, used by Monero, basically mix your transaction signature with a bunch of decoy signatures, making it unclear who the real sender was. And things like Mimblewimble, which cleverly aggregates and cuts transaction data to improve both privacy and scalability.
This whole privacy-transparency trade-off feels like it has huge political implications.
Absolutely. The book points to this global regulatory clash. On one side, you have growing demands for privacy protection, like GDPR in Europe. On the other, you have strong government pushes for anti-money laundering, AML, and Know Your Customer, KYC laws, which demand transparency.
So Web3 tech could go either way.
Depending on which privacy features are adopted, regulated, or even banned, the book suggests Web3 could evolve into either a powerful liberation machine, offering unprecedented user autonomy, or, conversely, an incredibly effective surveillance and execution machine, giving states or corporations even more monitoring power. The stakes are high.
Definitely something to watch.
No.
Okay, let's talk about trading tokens. Despite the PDP ideal, most trading still happens on centralized exchanges. CEXs like Binance or Coinbase, right?
Yeah, that's still where the majority of volume is. They're typically faster, offer more complex order types, and are just easier for most people to use.
But they're vulnerable. Single points of failure.
Hugely vulnerable. They hold custody of user funds, making them massive honeypots for hackers, and they can suffer from mismanagement insolvency. The Mt. Gox collapse back in the day is the classic painful example. This centralization fundamentally undermines the whole P2P ethos of crypto.
So what are the decentralized alternatives for trading?
Two main paths the book discusses. First, atomic swaps. These are true peer-to-peer trades directly between users' wallets, even across different blockchains, with no middleman at all.
How are they secured?
Usually with something called a hash time-locked contract, or HTLC. It's a type of smart contract that creates an escrow where both parties have to prove they've fulfilled their side of the deal within a certain time frame, using cryptographic secrets. If either party fails or time runs out, the funds automatically return. It ensures the swap is atomic, either both sides happen or neither does.
What's the catch?
The main challenge is discovery, finding someone who wants to trade the exact opposite pair, the exact amount, at the exact same time as you. It can be slow and inefficient for active trading.
So the more common solution is?
Decentralized exchanges, or DEXs. These are applications dApps that run directly on a blockchain. They allow users to trade, but the settlement, the actual swap of tokens, happens directly on-chain between user wallets.
So no central custodian holding the funds?
Right. You retain control of your keys and funds until the moment of the trade. This massively reduces counterparty risk compared to a CEX. But for a DEX to work well, it needs an efficient way to match buyers and sellers automatically, a discovery layer. Examples like Uniswap or Oasis DEX pioneered different models for this.
Okay, and building on top of this trading infrastructure, we get decentralized credit systems lending tokens, smart contracts enabling P2P loans.
Exactly. They create these two-sided marketplaces for borrowing and lending directly between peers, cutting out traditional banks and their overhead.
How does borrowing typically work in DeFi? Is it like getting a bank loan?
Not quite. Because there's usually no KYC, no traditional credit score to assess if you're likely to repay, almost all P2P borrowing in DeFi today is collateralized borrowing. Heavily collateralized, in fact.
Meaning you have to put up assets first.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to lock up crypto assets you already own, typically volatile tokens like ETH worth significantly more than the amount you want to borrow, often 150% or higher collateralization ratio.
Why? As insurance for the lender.
Precisely. If the value of your collateral drops too close to the value of the loan, the smart contract automatically liquidates your collateral, sells it off to ensure the lender gets their money back. It replaces trust in the borrower with trust in the collateral and the code.
Got it. Then there's this really unique concept, flash loans. What are those?
Flash loans are fascinating. They are a type of uncollateralized loan, but with a huge twist. They are only valid for the duration of one single blockchain transaction.
One transaction. How does that work?
It relies, again, on atomicity. A smart contract allows you to borrow potentially huge amounts of capital with zero upfront collateral, provided that within that same single transaction block you perform some operation, like arbitrage between exchanges, and repay the loan plus a small fee.
And if you can't repay within that single transaction?
The entire transaction fails. It's reverted by the blockchain network as if it never happened. The loan, the operations you tried, everything. Poof, gone.
So zero risk for the lender.
Exactly. The smart contract guarantees repayment within the atomic transaction, or the loan is never actually issued. It enables complex financial maneuvers that were previously impossible without massive capital reserves.
Mind-blowing stuff. Okay, let's shift to part 4, looking at applications and design. First up, token sales. How projects raise funds.
Yeah.
We saw the early days of ICOs, initial coin offerings. The Wild West.
Oh, yeah. ICOs were this completely unregulated peer-to-peer fundraising craze. Started with projects like Mastercoin, then Ethereum itself had a big one. It let projects raise millions directly from the public, bypassing venture capitalists.
But it was plagued by problems.
Massive problems, huge amounts of hype, speculation, and unfortunately outright scams. Lack of investor protection was a major issue.
So the market evolved into STOs.
Right. As regulators inevitably stepped in, the market matured towards security token offerings, or STOs. These are fundamentally different. STOs represent tokens that are legally classified as securities.
Meaning they have rules attached.
Yes. Compliance things like Know Your Customer, KYC, and anti-money laundering, AML checks, are often built directly into the token's smart contract code. This offers proper investor protection and regulatory clarity.
And STOs also enable that fractional ownership we talked about, but for regulated securities.
Exactly. It allows companies to issue fractional shares or bonds as tokens, making investments in potentially high-value private securities accessible to a much broader range of investors, potentially revolutionizing capital formation.
Okay, beyond finance, the book really emphasizes purpose-driven tokens. What's the core idea here?
The core idea is that DLTs, at their heart, are incentive machines. Purpose-driven tokens are specifically designed, engineered, to align the economic self-interest of individuals towards achieving some kind of collective goal.
Like what sort of goal?
Could be anything, really. Maintaining a public good, like funding open-source software development, rewarding scientific breakthroughs, or even coordinating efforts to reduce negative externalities, like carbon emissions, by rewarding pro-environmental behavior.
It sounds like it draws on psychology.
Yeah.
The book mentions the term token economy comes from there.
It does. It originates in behavioral psychology, think operant conditioning. Systems used in therapy or education, where tokens are given as rewards for desired behaviors, which can then be exchanged for something valuable.
So designing these crypto token economies needs more than just code.
Absolutely. It requires a deep understanding of behavioral economics. You have to anticipate how real people will react to the incentives, especially how to counteract things like the free rider problem, people benefiting from the collective good without contributing, which can cause the whole system to collapse if not designed carefully.
We saw some of these design challenges play out in early tokenized social networks, didn't we? Like Steemit.
Steemit is a classic example mentioned in the book. It aimed to reward users with tokens for creating and curating popular content. Great idea in theory.
But the flaw was,
The major flaw was that its core reputation and influence token, Steam Power, could just be bought on the open market.
so money equals influence.
Pretty much, it created these huge power imbalances. Wealthy individuals or groups could simply buy massive amounts of steam power, giving their votes disproportionate weight. It drowned out organic, high-quality content from regular users. Analysis showed something like only 2% of posts ever got significant rewards. The incentive mechanism was fundamentally broken by allowing influence to be bought directly.
So are there better models emerging? The book mentions Reddit's experiments.
Yeah, Reddit's community points trial with tokens like Moons for the cryptocurrency subreddit and Bricks for Fortnite BR is interesting. They are standard ERC20 tokens, but they're designed specifically for utility within that community, buying badges, weighted voting, and polls.
What's different from Steemit?
A key difference is the issuance model. The supply is often fixed or decreases over time, and distribution is based on community contribution, like earning karma, not just buying power. Control rests more with the community itself. It's an ongoing experiment, but structurally different.
Another key example tackling a specific problem is the basic attention token.
Right. BAT, used by the Brave browser, directly targets the problems of the current online advertising model, the Web 2 attention economy. The intrusive tracking, the privacy violations, users getting nothing while platforms make billions from their data.
So how does BAT work?
Brave blocks traditional trackers and ads by default, but users can opt in to view privacy-respecting ads. When they do, they get rewarded with BAT tokens, potentially up to 70% of the ad revenue generated by their attention.
Where's the innovation? Is it still tracking users?
The key innovation is how it targets ads. It uses machine learning algorithms called Basic Attention Metrics, or BAM, that run locally on the user's device. It figures out user interest without sending any personal data to Brave servers. The user maintains privacy while still getting relevant ads and compensation.
Very interesting. Okay, one last application type. Token curated registries, or TCRs. What problem are these trying to solve?
TCRs are essentially a decentralized way to create and maintain high-quality lists. Think whitelists of trusted vendors, blacklists of known scams, or maybe lists of legitimate news sources, all without relying on a single central authority to manage the list.
How does the token mechanism work?
It's based on staking incentives. Someone who wants to get onto the list, a candidate, has to deposit a stake of the registry's native token. Then, existing token holders, curators, can use their own staked tokens to vote on whether to accept the application or to challenge an existing entry they think is bad.
So there are rewards and penalties.
Yes. If a curator successfully challenges a bad entry and the community agrees via voting, they get rewarded, often taking part of the challenged applicant's stake. If the challenge fails, the curator loses their stake. It creates economic incentives for token holders to actively maintain the quality and integrity of the list.
But it's not foolproof. The book mentions attack vectors and criticism.
Definitely not foolproof. Like DAOs, the economic incentives need to be carefully designed to be strong enough to resist attacks. Trolling, bribing voters, or even a madman attack, where someone with deep pockets tries to buy up enough tokens to control the list curation. These are real risks.
Again, the assumption of rationality is a potential weakness.
Exactly. Critics point out that curators might just engage in coin-flipping random voting to try and earn rewards without doing actual research, especially if the cost of research is high. And just like in DAOs, wealth can equal power. On subjective lists especially, those with more tokens have more voting weight, which can skew the outcome regardless of objective quality.
So careful design is paramount, which brings us perfectly to the final section. How to design a token system. The book argues we need to move towards rigorous token engineering.
This is the ultimate takeaway, I think. The era of just slapping a token onto something and hoping for the best, that hack now, pivot later approach from Web 2. It's not good enough for systems that handle real value and complex social coordination. We need a proper engineering discipline.
And the book breaks this down into 4 essential engineering areas.
Yes. First, obviously, is technical engineering. Choosing the right blockchain, the right token standard, like ERC20 for fungible, ERC721 for unique, ensuring the code is secure, scalable, handles privacy correctly, all based on the specific needs of the system. That's the foundation.
Okay, technical. What's second?
Second is legal engineering. This is absolutely critical, especially for simple systems that directly map to existing concepts, like tokenizing securities or managing identities. You have to ensure the token design and smart contracts comply with all relevant laws and regulations from day one. We saw this with STOs needing built-in compliance.
Makes sense.
Third, and maybe the most complex, is economic engineering. This is vital for those complex systems, especially purpose-driven tokens trying to steer collective behavior. It's not just about writing code, it's about using game theory, behavioral economics, complex systems modeling.
To predict how people will actually act.
Exactly. To simulate the system under different conditions, anticipate potential exploits or failures like the free rider problem, and fine-tune the incentive mechanisms to make sure they actually achieve the intended goal robustly.
And the 4th discipline.
Finally, and arguably most importantly, is ethical engineering. This tackles the unavoidable sociopolitical questions embedded in these automated systems. What values are we encoding? Are the rules fair? Who benefits? Who might be excluded or harmed?
These questions need answers before you build.
Absolutely. The book stresses that ethical considerations can't be an afterthought. They need to be part of the design process from the very beginning, involving not just engineers, but also lawyers, economists, social scientists, ethicists, because, as the final powerful quote warns, if we fail to incorporate ethical questions in the design thinking process of such systems, we will create protocol bias.
Protocol bias. That sounds serious, meaning the bias gets baked into the unbreakable code.
Precisely. If the automated rules of the game are inherently unfair or reflect the biases of their creators, and those rules are enforced relentlessly by the blockchain, you've created a potentially discriminatory system that's very hard to fix later. Ensuring fairness and alignment with long-term societal goals becomes the ultimate design challenge. It requires true interdisciplinary collaboration. #outro.
Wow. Well, this book by Shermin Voshmgir really does provide an incredibly valuable, comprehensive roadmap for anyone trying to navigate this huge shift in how the internet works, doesn't it?
It really does.
So just to recap the main arguments for you listening, the book makes a strong case that Web3 isn't just a facelift. It's a fundamental back-end revolution. It's introducing that universal state layer needed for true digital value exchange and agreements that enforce themselves.
Right. And tokens are the key building blocks, these low-cost digital units that enable totally new things, like easy fractional ownership of assets and the whole explosion of decentralized financial services we see in DeFi.
But, and this is crucial, the book shows the integrity and the long-term success of these networks isn't just about clever code. It depends deeply on these complex cryptoeconomic designs, using incentives and game theory to keep things secure and running.
Which demands that rigorous interdisciplinary approach we just talked about, token engineering. It has to bring together the technical, the legal, the economic, and critically, the ethical dimensions.
So, thinking about the key takeaways for you, the listener, grappling with all this, what should you keep in mind?
Okay, I'd say first, remember, the Web3 shift is really about you gaining control, gaining sovereignty over your digital identity and data.
Wow.
It's a structural move away from those centralized data silos of Web2.
Right, user empowerment.
Second, smart contracts are powerful tools for automating trust and cutting out middlemen, yes, but their governance is incredibly hard. The human element, free riders, bounded rationality, unforeseen events, as the AO painfully show, that's still the biggest challenge. Code isn't always law when reality hits. Third, crypto economics is this fascinating blend of cryptography and economic incentives. It's using tokens and game theory to secure shared digital infrastructure in ways that were impossible before, finally solving problems like the Byzantine generals problem.
Okay.
And finally, the future of finance looks increasingly tokenized. We're talking about turning almost any asset into a liquid, tradable digital token and building entirely new financial plumbing on top of things like automated lending markets and those wild flash loans.
The potential of this tokenized internet definitely feels immense. But as the book makes clear, so does the responsibility resting on the shoulders of the people building it. If code really is becoming law, and these protocols automate economic and social rules, Well, we have to constantly ask, are these rules fair? Who decided them? And if a protocol is biased and changing it requires messy human politics, who's ultimately accountable for the automated outcomes? That's a huge question for all of us as this infrastructure continues to evolve. Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Us Bookcast. We hope you found inspiration in these ideas. Don't forget to subscribe and share together. We're co-creating the world of tomorrow.